You're listening to Lemon's Listening Library. Discover the story behind the stories with unique and raw conversations from the people who make your favorite books a reality. Welcome to this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. I'm your host, Randy Lemons, fantasy author, or R.L. Rose to those of you in the romance community, and I am joined today by my amazing co-host, Kathy. Kathy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Kathy Ireland. I am an avid audiobook consumer. That's how I consume probably about 98% of my books. And I also do audiobook production management, so helping authors get their books into an audiobook. So it's pretty fun. So that's pretty much my roles.
Yeah. All right, before we introduce our guest today, I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you guys are interested in having your services advertised on our show, head over to our Patreon account. It's a great way to get your services out there, and it's a great way to support the show. We have a couple events coming up, so if you guys hear about the authors or human-only voices, we're going to be doing a 24-hour live event in February. We will release the date pretty soon on what day that's going to be. So we're really excited about that. Check that out. And then also we had our book cover contest and it just finished. So we have our book cover winner on our Threads account. Go check that out. We will also be doing some advertising for that. Book cover winner is a really good book and I'm so excited about the author who won. So, all right. Now, with all that said, we would like to introduce you guys to Aaron Smith. Aaron, would you like to introduce yourselves to our guests and tell them a little bit about you?
Hi. So yes, I'm Aaron Smith, an audiobook narrator, and little about myself other than the fact that I've to date recorded 231 audiobooks. I love storytelling in all its aspects, and so if I'm not audiobook narrating, I'm either going to be playing a story-based RPG, a TTRPG like D&D, or crafting my next cosplay for the next LARP or Ren Fair that I'm going to. I'm big into that aspect of fantasy.
Those all kind of thread into each other, right? Like you can almost just take a personality that you have in one area and put it into another area with all of what you just said.
It's a lot of fun, and one has led to the other and picked up a lot of things. I wouldn't have really realized how much fun Ren Fairs were until I had met my now wife, and one of the things that attracted her to me, to her, was the fact that I was a narrator. So it all kind of built on top of one another.
So what was your first thing that kind of got you into the fantasy world? Was it reading or playing tabletop games or?
So it would have to be reading. So when I was younger, I don't have a lot of memories of my childhood, as most people don't, but some things that I do remember is I used to have an issue where I would try to breathe practically between every word that I would say. And it's something that stuck in my mind. I don't remember that ever being an issue after I started reading a story whilst listening to the audiobook. And doing that process completely just reframed how I consume a book. So my all-time favorite book is The Pawn of Prophecy by David Eddings. It's the first book in the Belgariad series, a very sword and sorcery, coming-of-age fantasy story. And I read it whilst listening to the audiobook version, and as a result of that, every time I read a book, I narrate it in my head. It just completely reframed how I enjoy stories.
Yeah. So I have a similar experience, but a little bit different. I'm dyslexic, very bad. And so I used to hate reading books because I was like, I can never get through a chapter without, or even a paragraph without having to start back over or understand what I read. And it just took me forever to read a full book. And like, all my friends who read, they're like, oh yeah, I've finished like 10 books this week. And it was so defeating to my self-esteem until I found audiobooks, and then the tandem reading or just reading audiobooks by themselves. It really changed the way that I love books in the fantasy world.
Recently learned through an author that I've done audiobooks for, when he announced that his books are now available on in a dyslexic-friendly font, that dyslexic-friendly fonts exist. And I think that's amazing that that's available.
Yeah. No, that's something that it's pretty new too, and it's coming out and getting much more popular. But I personally have not read any like that yet because cause audiobooks are my jam. Like I love audiobooks, and I think narrators are like my favorite people because we've had a lot of narrators on the show, and just getting to know you guys, I'm like, okay, audiobooks are probably in game for me. Like I don't see me going back to just reading ever.
I really got into audiobooks was I was doing a lot of cross country road trips from Florida to Texas and to Colorado and California when my daughter was in LA. And so I just put, I don't really like to, I know I'm weird. I don't really like to listen to music when I'm driving. So I put on an audiobook, and the Immortal Curse series by Lexi C. Foss was the first, um, really the first one that I can remember that just completely stuck in my head. Like I loved it. Fell in love with Cale Williams and Troy Duran and all the people that were in there. And yeah, that was, I was hooked after that. That was it.
It's cool.
So, what was the kind of thing that pulled you into narration in audiobooks as someone who produces and gives your voice to those?
Yeah, so I remember being told in my youth that I sounded good reading. There were a few occasions where people said they liked my voice, but I just naturally assumed that's because I'm an Englishman and I have this voice, right? And so while I was freshly going through a divorce, in the early separation period, I put myself almost insanely into playing D&D. I was a professional dungeon master at the time. At the height of it, I was running 16 games of D&D a week.
Wow. Holy
And
cow.
from jumping into that, I immersed myself into doing voices,
So I
characters.
want to I want to
Yeah.
let the listeners know a lot of times D&D sessions last from 2 to 4 hours each. That is insane.
My Saturdays back then, I would wake up at ridiculous o'clock in the morning and run a game for the people. I was living in Germany at the time. I would run a game that would be about 4 hours for a group of people in Australia. And then when that game was done, I'd have a bit of a break. Then at lunchtime, I would run a game for some people in Europe area. Then in the afternoon, after a little bit of a break again, I would be running a game for what would be midday East Coast US. And then at night, I would run a game for a group of people on the west coast of the US.
Oh my
So I more or less experienced Saturday midday in all the time zones
Oh my
like
by running four
Groundhog Day
games
for
that
you
day.
every
god. Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Now, were they all the same campaign, or were they
I was
all
going to
different
ask that.
campaigns, completely different storylines?
So usually I would run like four different campaigns. So 16 groups, four campaigns. But by that point, I'd run enough of them that I could run them without any real preparation. It's just planning and tweaking. Okay, how is this story different because of these players? And how is this
Because
world
they
altered?
created
Yeah.
different paths.
Yeah. I was going to say,
Yeah.
how do you remember the different campaigns? Because when my son does his campaign, like it is so in depth. I mean, so in depth, and they have like a couple of different ones. I'm like, wait, what? These are the guys in the space whatevers, and these are the elemental. Like it's yeah. So I don't even know how you kept up with that.
Lots of notes and recordings. That does it. But yeah.
Did you oh my gosh, I'm such a D&D nerd, so I apologize for this, but like do you have what was your platform that you did it? Did you do it on Roll20?
I did it on Roll20, and so I stopped playing using Roll20 and focusing more on theatre of the mind a couple of years ago. But when I stopped using it in depth, I racked up almost 8,000 hours of playtime in Roll20. I loved
Wow.
using the virtual tabletop, and this all came. It's all during the same time period of me just losing myself and more or less distracting myself by keeping busy with all of this stuff. That I even scanned in all the pieces to my favorite board games and duplicated them completely on Roll20 so that I could play them with friends online that I had met. It was all during that same period of trying to almost distract myself, you know.
So do you think that that helped you, Aaron, to, I mean, yeah, it helped you to distract, but did it help you? Because I'm going to preface this by saying sometimes I find that listening to an audiobook can help me separate a little bit from my own emotional whatever that I'm trying to deal with enough to experience this, right? Whatever's going on in the book, then I can deal with my own shit. So is that what happened to you? Did it help you do that?
Absolutely, yes. So it was a few players in D&D that told me I sounded good reading and I should try to be an audiobook narrator, so I gave it a go. And what I found through both, through audiobook narration and D&D, losing myself into those worlds allowed me to work through things almost in a third person manner. There's an incredible charity, and off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of the charity, but they run therapy for children with anxiety issues through the medium of D&D. And so by embodying characters in an audiobook that were struggling with relationship issues, with loss, with anxiety and struggles, and voicing how they are getting over those issues, it helps me experience those things. And I can't help but experience everything the characters I'm playing as or reading and narrating as experience while they're going through it.
That is awesome. Oh, you said you don't remember the name of that charity?
I don't. I will try to
That's okay.
find it.
Yeah,
Um,
because I do something very similar with my son. He's autistic and he has ADHD as well. And having him play D&D and putting his character in situations that he knows he's in a safe space, he knows that nothing bad is actually going to physically happen to him. It's just his character going through it, and it's amazing the amount of critical thinking skills that they suddenly have, right? Like
mhm.
in real life, sometimes they might not have it that way, but when they're in a place that they know that they are for the most part completely in control of what happens to their character, um, it's just crazy to watch their ability to just pick up on stuff and move through stuff, and it shifts into real life in a lot of ways.
And so it absolutely helped me completely during that time. I had gone from a relationship where, looking back now, I was constantly being told I was a waste and constantly being put down, to finding that thing that everyone who heard an audiobook by me would say, well, of course, you've got the voice for it. That's amazing. And it just helped build me back up from where I was, which was incredible.
Yeah, especially with someone that's so close to you to tear you down, your belief system was probably just so shattered. And what probably happened was is you started doing this thing that everyone said you're good at, and then people kept telling you were good at it, so it started reinforcing your belief that hey, I actually am a badass narrator.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie. Your voice is one of the biggest reasons. When I heard you on your TikTok live, I was like, please come on our show.
Well, thank you. It really sank into me only very recently. So I've been doing audiobooks for 6 years. I started in 2018 as a bit of a hobby and became serious about it just before the pandemic hit, when a lot of other people joined in. It only really caught up to me just about a year or so ago, when I'm out in the wild. I'm not on TikTok where people know that I'm a narrator. I was just out in the wild and someone heard me talk and say, "Hey, I know your voice. Did you do?" And it was talking about A Forest of Vanity and Valor, which was by A.P. Beswick. And like at that moment, I've always had this dream of narrating a book that everyone in the world has listened to. And meeting someone in the wild that has listened to a book that I've done really solidified, I am making my dream come true. This is amazing.
That's so
That
cool.
is
Oh my
cool.
gosh. And your voice is so distinct too. Like I feel like, there's a couple big narrators or voice actors that do different things, and me and my husband can always pick them out. But some of them have voices like, and he was like, if I ever became famous with my voice, no one would recognize me in public. But your voice has that, it's distinct enough that yeah, people are gonna pick you out pretty easy.
Thank you.
uh, that's really
That is
cool.
cool. I have one more question for you, and in that, um, so did you kind of start choosing um narration roles to a little bit further help your healing from that, or did it just kind of like happen?
So I jumped into every role I possibly could when I first started. So my first story that I ever did was a post-apocalyptic England. Someone was in a bunker during when the bombs were set off, and then what they explored afterwards. Then my next one was called Away with the Fairies, a 30-minute short story that I had to do the whole thing in a slight Irish accent. And then the next thing was a World War II werewolf vampire story. So I just experienced everything I possibly could. But by experiencing all the different kinds of genres, I very soon found that my voice and enjoyment level lended itself really well to more of the fantasy stories. And it was in those fantasy stories that you get a lot more of the occasions of a hero struggling against oppression and against often not just external but internal issues, and rising above it. And so it wasn't at first that I was looking for it, but I definitely found it as I was going through.
I love how healing storytelling can
Mm-hmm.
be. And we had someone else on who she was talking about how storytelling is like the oldest form of religion, and that was something that stuck with me, and I love it. I love that so much. Yeah, yeah. Well, even if you think about religions and things,
How they
that was
passed
how they told
it
about their
down. Yeah, it
religions.
was by verbally passive, by telling them. They didn't read, didn't have paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you got into this pre-pandemic where, and we've noticed this too, like a lot of authors and a lot of narrators came to narration and writing after the pandemic. Since you were there before, do you notice a big shift in the industry, or like has a lot of stuff changed since then?
I noticed kind of like a wave that has settled now at this point and then is somewhat being disrupted a little bit more. So when I first started, ACX, which if anyone doesn't know what ACX is, it's Amazon's creative exchange. It's their website where they set up where you can get audiobook work, essentially. You don't have to have any prior experience. You just audition for projects. And if you get it, you get it. Great. You're a narrator. So when I first signed up, there was a little counter on the ACX website that said there were 60,000 registered narrators. And then when the pandemic hit, that number almost overnight turned to 100, 200,000. I saw it get up to 500,000 before. Now I recently went to check, and that counter is not on the website. There were a lot of people that jumped on it. And from that, hundreds of thousands of people that signed up to be narrators, a few absolutely incredible narrators joined in and realized that they have this skill that they have. But there were also a lot of not very good narrators, a lot of people who fell foul to the ads that say, "Hey, do you want to earn $400 an hour by just reading?" Uh, and they realized that it's far much more work than just reading. And so there
Yep.
was a wave of a lot of low quality narration. And then that kind of died down as those people stepped away because it's more work than it's worth. And then you got some really good quality narrators. And then now you see that there's a lot of people trying to push the AI narration side of things in. And that's going to peak, and then it'll die down and it'll go back to just the high quality narrators once again.
Yeah, that's an interesting trend. And I feel like that's probably the same way in a lot of different facets of life or industries and things. Something new comes out, and then the tried and true thing is what is there in the end. Um, but it's interesting with the narration on how, like you said, they try this thing and then they realize they have to publish or they have to produce their own stuff. They have to go through and fix their mess ups all on their own, and that, we have learned through talking to narrators, is a lot of work. And you don't get someone, a producer, who's the in between, giving you the how does this person sound, just highlighting all the different people who's talking. You have to do all that typically through ACX on your own.
Yeah. And it's something that I wish I had learned a little bit better when I first started. And I hope anyone who is getting started with using ACX is the cost, your rate should be based on your skill and your ability, not how many books you have already done. Because you hear tale of the dream ones that are $400 per finished hour, but the industry standard rate right now is $250 per finished hour. Now that might sound like a lot, but that's based on the length of the audiobook, not how long it takes you to produce. It takes the average narrator between 4 and 6 hours of work to produce 1 hour of finished audio, and that's prepping the manuscript, that's narrating, then editing and mastering and publishing. And then if you it's always good to then also advertise the book and do a bunch afterwards. So the amount of pay you take home per hour that you work is not $250 per finished hour. It's a lot lower. ACX has a ton of good quality books that are on there listed where the author's budget is between $50 and $100 per finished hour. At that point, any narrator that does those books and does a good job narrating it is not being paid minimum wage for their time to produce that audiobook. And it's a shame. I did it when I first started. Every few books that I did, and I felt more confident being able to advertise and negotiate. I started at 50 and then worked my way up. But I wish I didn't, because you don't make any money off of the $50 per finished hour books. And that's what a
Well,
lot of those people will have experienced.
yeah. And what's even more kicker than that is if you do the royalty share ones and then that book is out and it's not making any money.
Mm-hmm.
And you just spent, 10 hours per finished hour, not including all the hours that it took to produce it and get it ready. No, it's ACX it can be great, but I feel bad for some of the narrators on there. Like, I feel like a lot of authors they're hitting the jackpot with that.
Yeah.
Well, are
Yeah.
you a SAG-AFTRA?
I'm not, no. And partly because I don't quite know how to get jumped into that. Like, I tried to follow the line of how to get started, and it immediately jumped to, well, you need to have this, this, and this, and these are things that I didn't understand. And I've only just gotten a green card, so where they ask for a social security number. I finally have one that I can actually sign up for. But no, I'm not SAG-AFTRA right now.
Gotcha. Definitely, it's fantastic for the narrators, right? Because it protects them from being exploited like that, where they're just getting, completely taken advantage of with the rates. So it is a great system for the narrators. Sometimes a little costly for the authors, but there's a happy balance in there for sure.
For me,
So,
my
oh, go
job
ahead.
security is purely in my relationship with the authors. You find a good author and you really make sure that you have a good relationship with them, they'll keep you for years to come. I've done 10 books for AP Beswick now, I think a little bit more. I'm about to do a Christmas one in a couple of weeks. And I know that I've built up a good relationship with him that no matter what, when he writes a book, he's going to come to me and offer me the opportunity first. There's another author that I just recently signed that I found out he's doing a book signing today, not far, like 45 minutes away from me. So when this is done, I'll be rushing over to meet with them and try to build up that relationship, because that's another 10-book series that will keep me secure till later. If you're anonymously on ACX, just auditioning, doing a project, and then that's it, you don't have that kind of security and safety.
Yeah. Do you use pseudonyms?
I have done, yes, and I
Yeah.
do. So I have a pseudonym that I use for my more spicy romances. And as you say, because my voice is fairly distinct, when you listen to it, you'll notice it. But like a lot of narrators who use pseudonyms, I won't name drop my pseudonym for that purpose. There was one occasion where I made the mistake of not reading a manuscript all the way through, and I just started producing it. And so when I got to a certain section of the book that I really didn't feel comfortable having my name attached to, I didn't feel it was towards the end of the production line. I didn't feel like it was right and fair to just cancel the contract with the author just because it was a issue for me. So I then put that out under a pseudonym that I can't remember what it was at this point.
That's
But
amazing.
otherwise, it's just me or my romance pseudonym.
That's awesome. That leads me to another question. Do you have tropes or plot lines or genres that you're like, no, this is not for me. I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Under the other pseudonym
Yeah,
too.
either one.
So, not so much. Because I've done enough audiobooks at this point, I don't tend to audition for any books that I don't want my name attached to, that I don't want to be involved in. Back then, I was going for everything and anything. The one thing that I won't do is a book that is clearly purposefully harmful. Now, regardless of who it's harmful towards, whatever demographic it is picked, if the main character, the character we're supposed to root for and almost embody and put ourselves into, is hateful, I just cannot do that at all.
Because of that.
I have turned down one book which, after so when you're producing an audiobook, I'm sure other narrators have mentioned it, you don't get to see the manuscript until after a contract has been sent to you, but you do have the safety net of the first 15-minute sample. If you read through the manuscript, produce a sample, and the author agrees and is happy with that sample, then you move on. If either yourself or the author are not happy with that sample, then you just separate and everything's fine. there has been one occasion where, as I was preparing to make the 15-minute sample, I realized towards the end of the book, the the conflict within this world that was between two warring races became very clearly a dominant race enslaving a lesser race, and there was a lot of hate speech reminiscent to historical characters who would try to convince you that this other people weren't even human, so that you could hate them. And when I noticed that, I was like, this may fit with the narrative of your story, but it does not fit with what I'm comfortable with. So on that occasion, I said no to that one.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that. I love whenever people can say no. That makes me like people, right? Like I love people who can say no. It's such a great quality to have, which sounds bizarre, but it is. So you completely are self-taught with your narration and the way that you do things. When you start doing accents, was that like just you start reading everything or saying everything for a couple days in different accents, or how do you teach yourself a different accent?
I am lucky in that I have lived and experienced a lot of nations growing up. The thing that people in the US don't quite recognize is that just how close and how easy it used to be to travel through Europe and experience all the different accents there. I would go on a school trip from my school in the Midlands in Birmingham, and that school trip would be to Paris, or it would be to Spain, it would be to Germany, and these were things that the school just did. And that would only be like 5 or 7 hour drive. But if your school did a 5 hour road trip somewhere, it would still be in the same state, so you wouldn't experience a different culture. I lived and worked in the US, and then, I did my senior year of high school in America. Then I lived and worked in Germany as well as England and Scotland. And so I've experienced a lot of different people around me who had the real accent. So I was influenced by that a bunch. Now, whenever I need to pick up a new accent, I will usually look for a good movie or TV character that embodies that accent, and hopefully the author can lead me towards it, the character they were thinking of, and I will binge watch that show or that individual, every clip I possibly could, to the point where I'm then repeating all the lines and getting to it. About a year and a half ago, I did a book based on a true story about cattle rustlers. It's called Branded. The entire book is me doing a bit of a Sam Elliott voice for the whole narration of that story. And it was fun to then immerse myself into old westerns and cowboy stories and Sam Elliott
He's
movies,
so
to
good
be able to
too.
get that voice. Thank you. It did have the knock-on effect because that book was so funny story about that story. It's an 18-hour finished product, so it takes about 60 hours of actual work to produce.
Jeez.
I got to the end of it, and the author said, "Hey, because it's based on a true story, my lawyers have told me I need to change a few details to avoid defamation issues. So could you change all the place and character names for me?" So he'd given me a list of all the character and place names that needed to be changed, and these are the names that they need to be. And if you know anything about doing pickups, you can't just go in and change one word. You have to change the sentence or the paragraph that it's in. And when it's every character, every town location, everything like that,
You essentially
it's the
redid
whole
the whole
story
book.
again. Yeah. So I spent the better part of 2 months just because I do this part time, I don't do it full time, talking in a deep southern accent that I found myself falling into it when I wasn't narrating, just outside of it, because I was just immersed in that voice.
But like how jarring for the people outside of, your book world, because, that's a very significant change to your voice. And then, you go to the same place every day to get coffee and you're talking one way one time and you go there the next time and you're Sam Elliott and they're like, Wait a second.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
It's even more of a jarring experience when someone hears me doing a female voice. So you get used to the way my voice sounds and the depth that it is. And then when I pull out a softer version of my voice, people think, well, that shouldn't come out of that individual. That doesn't fit him. Yeah.
You're right. But dang, that is a good range. Holy cow. See, and I was just talking to, who are we talking to about? I didn't think that guys could do the good female voices having a deep voice. You just proved me wrong.
A lot of deep voiced individuals will try to go into a falsetto voice, like up in the. Feels like the voice is actually coming out of the top of your head, kind of voice, and it just sounds jarring and horrible. So, if anyone wants to try it, just soften what you already do. Just keep softening it until it sounds good.
Do you ever like purposely fuck with people with that? Like just to fuck with them? Like maybe in your DMs or
Answer the
something? Yeah.
phone.
Not with the female voice, but I will often do different accents, particularly usually various English accents. When just saying a line or two to someone, it'll sound odd to them, but they can't quite put a finger on why it sounds odd. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, if my husband had the range of voice that you do, he'd be, just like Kathy said, he'd be screwed with us all the time because he'll like narrate our kids playing and stuff, like commentary on them, like he's a, a racetrack announcer or something. And if he had that, oh my gosh, our lives would be nothing but just voices, different
Chaos.
voices. Yeah.
Yes. I need
Oh,
to
that's
pause for
awesome.
just a minute. I'm so sorry, but my mic showed up and I don't want to leave it sitting out. So
Oh, yeah, go grab
hold
it.
on.
Mics are important.
Yeah. Well, we are trying to, up our quality of our show,
Mm-hmm.
and we found out that there's the USB mics aren't that great, and if you do get one, you need like a really expensive one. So she's upgrading. It's
Ooh, very nice. Very nice.
Black Friday deal for the win.
Thank you.
Oh
Sorry.
my gosh.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Continue.
You're good. All right. Actually, I'm gonna clip that part. Ooh, you're good. Got it.
Okay. There we go.
So I was gonna ask, do you experience, like, you said you did your high school year in the US? Was it like you coming here and your voice was just like swoon worthy for girls? Like all the US girls are just like, oh my gosh, his voice.
Yes. So there was a kind of a bit of a funny experience in that transitioning from English schools to American schools is very different. I went from a school where everyone is in a uniform every day, and the subjects that we were doing were very structured and specific. You didn't have as much choice over the subjects you did. And I had just finished 2 years of an English literature class where we spent 2 years breaking down Romeo and Juliet. Just the whole 2 years was just tearing to pieces that one play. And so when I moved to America, to Utah, to experience senior year of high school, everything was strange. No uniforms. All the classes that people could take were things that they chose to take. I ended up taking a men's choir class as well as a wrestling class, as well as maths and physics and all of that. But the English literature class I went to, I went in very quiet, timidly. I'm the new kid at school, and the teacher pointed me towards the only empty chair. So I went and sat in it and just listened. As it would happen, they were discussing Romeo and Juliet. And so the teacher had asked a couple questions about it, and they'd been spending just a couple weeks talking about it. And a few people added a few comments here and there, but I was ready with a good spiel about Romeo and Juliet for that exact moment. So I waited until there was a bit of a lull in the comments from people, and the teacher was looking to see if there was anything else someone wanted to add. And I timidly put my hand up. And then when they asked me for my view, I started explaining, and you could hear just all throughout the
And it's
class as
like,
people realized, yeah,
If only they had cell phones then, that would have been like,
yeah. I then so people realized, thinking, oh, this guy sounds really cool. He's a new kid. Then a couple of hours later was lunchtime, and I had my first high school cafeteria experience, which is not an experience that I was used to at all. I got my food. I didn't know any other students, so I didn't know where to go. And I had that moment where the cheerleaders table waved me over and invited me to them. I was like, well, this is amazing. This is fantastic. And then they got to know me and learned that I enjoyed miniature painting and wargaming and video games and books and all the things that they just were not interested in at all. And so I got banished to the table of my people.
the nerd table.
Yeah.
and they were just waiting for you. They're like, we know he's coming here. It's fine, guys. Just wait
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah. So you're in Utah?
But as a
Is that what you said? Utah?
yeah, I'm in Utah now. I was there for my senior year, then left, went to Texas for a couple of years, and then back to England for university, and now back to Utah.
So how was that adjustment? Seeing that probably most of the boys showing up in their trucks with guns in their truck, ready to go hunting and stuff afterwards.
It's a very weird experience. Number of levels to that. So you've got the guns thing. I'm just not used to that being a thing. My house has plenty of swords, a couple of axes. I do medieval armored combat on the weekends, so I have real steel armor and a mason shield, ready to defend my home in melee combat if needed, but I don't have any guns. I'm never used to that
If
sort
the
of thing.
Urukai come, you're ready to go.
I am there. An intruder comes through the door. There's almost a choose your weapon style rack of weapons for them right as they enter. And trucks, schools, like kids having vehicles. In England, you don't start learning to drive until you're 17 and a half. You don't usually get a car until you're 18. There's this whole idea of parents buying kids a car. That's not a thing in England. Like, the kids get put on the insurance for the family car until they can buy their own. I'd never experienced someone who, until I got to Utah, someone who said, yeah, my dad bought me the car when I turned 16. That's weird. Very weird.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would prefer the other way. I mean, as a kid, I didn't, but as an adult who now has to do it for my children, I think we're moving to England for that period of time. So when you went back to England, were you able to do like a really good American accent, and then did it swoon the girls there, or were they just like, that's not as interesting as our accents?
I would say, since I had just come back from living in Texas for 2 years, I could do a fairly good Western and Southern accent, not a general American at the time, but it wasn't as impressive. We don't.
Oh, okay, you're good.
Okay. There isn't the same attitude of, oh, I love his voice from the other side of things. Americans love hearing an English voice. English people, not as much.
They can take
or
it
at
or
least
leave
from
it.
my experience, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, because like it's just not, I don't know, for one, you probably hear it a lot more, right? I imagine even your guys' movies there are heavily Americanized versus where ours are, when we have the British people come in, it's the different thing. And actually I don't know that. I feel like I'm assuming that. Is it pretty dominantly still American voices for the movies that you guys watch?
So, with the advent of more streaming services and people watching things on Netflix and Amazon Prime and whatnot, while there is geolocation locking of TV shows, it's a lot more worldwide. We experience all sorts. There used to be a time where a movie would come out in America and England wouldn't get it for 3 months, kind of thing. And so that's completely gone away. And with that, so has that barrier. Most of the TV shows are produced in the US. So the movies are produced out there. We do still find that the majority of British accents are usually going to be villains in American movies. That's still a thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I hadn't really noticed that, but
Yeah. Well, that's what we were talking about is like I was trying to figure out, the British aren't as swoony over the American accents as we are for the English accents. And I feel like with the production of movies and everything, and there's so many American accents in those, it kind of just, what's the word? The wow factor is gone. Whereas there's still a lot less English accents in movies. So it's still there. It's very heavily, oh, your voice.
It's also having an effect on accents themselves. So the reason why there are regional accents is because people grew up in an enclosed environment and only really experiencing one particular voice, and that just builds up and becomes its own voice. But now that the world is opening up and people are interacting more, TV and movies are getting people to experience more accents, you're finding less and less regional accents and more of a blend of things these days. So to a degree, we're also losing some things.
That's
I can
heartbreaking.
totally see
I,
that though. I mean, if you think about even across America, I mean, there's definitely different states that are kind of like a hodgepodge. Like Colorado is very much a state that Coloradoans don't have an accent per se. It's very neutral, but with more, maybe people from California coming out than, other people moving in from other states. And the same thing happening in Florida. Like we have so many people from the Northeast that come down here. It kind of dilutes and mixes the things.
that's
Yeah.
interesting. No, that's an interesting concept to think about. What is going to be the winning, if we are all so exposed to everyone in the end, is it just going to be this very bland, not. Oh, that breaks my heart. I love accents. That's
Me
probably one
too.
of my favorite things about some books. So that's an interesting concept.
It'll probably
Um,
be heavily influenced by Bluey and
yes, I'm kind
children
of okay with that.
children's TV. While the kids are learning to speak, what are they being more exposed to in terms of the accents? Yeah,
If we all just have a little bit of Australian accents, I'm okay with that.
yeah.
But we can't get rid of the British either, though. Can you imagine a British Australian accent? That would be interesting. Did you ever do? Your voice reminds me so much of Taryn, Fourth Wing. Did you ever do the challenge for the Taryn voice?
No, I didn't.
Oh
I
my
kind of
gosh.
missed the bandwagon with Fourth Wing. It kind of appeared
That's
and
fair.
passed me by.
Have you read
Well, you might have another chance again because her third book is coming out in January. So be prepared for that because your voice, I think that was one of the first things I thought of hearing you, especially when you go like growly, is Taryn's voice, her dragon.
it? And it's still the thing that we're totally dissecting your voice right now. But the thing that I love about Aaron's voice is that it's growly and deep and just like, like that dominant whatever, but it's still understandable. Where
Yep.
some of the other people that have done that, like you can't really understand them once they get into that like deep growl. It's like, okay, you can growl. Cool. Can't understand what you're
You're one hit wonder, dude. Not
That's
you, Aaron. You are
not me. Okay.
multifaceted.
Thank you. I find that with those that are putting on the growl a little bit more, they don't know it doesn't resonate naturally within their throat. So yeah, it's hard to understand.
saying. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
So I have to know for my personal reasons, do you charge for your D&D sessions? Are you like a paid DM? Or is that just something that you don't really do as much anymore?
So I used to charge. I don't anymore. Back when I was doing it at the height of things, I I regularly charged $20 a person per session to play at my table, but I don't do that anymore. I just play for fun. So right now, I have a game that I'm going to be starting and running for my wife, brother-in-law, and his wife, and a few friends in the area. That'll be a personal game. I have an online game that I run for a friend that I met playing D&D, who is actually now my day job boss. I run a game for him, who recently, for his birthday, arranged a company training meeting in the location, so that there was an excuse for me to go out and run a game of D&D for him. I've just recently joined as a player. I rarely get an opportunity to be a player, but I've just recently joined as a player the Punch and Roll for Initiative group. I don't know if you've heard of these guys. It is just audiobook narrators. So the
Oh,
DM is Ethan Gray. I think it is.
yes.
Yeah.
We know
Oh,
about that.
yeah, he came. Yep, he was telling me about it before you guys got started. Oh, that's so awesome to know that you're in that.
Yeah, very excited with the opportunity. We had a bit of a tester session to see if we all collaborated well recently, and it was a lot of fun to do. And I'm very much looking forward to playing in a game where everyone there is a narrator,
Can
which
you
means
tell us who
everyone
all is in
can
it?
and will do voices. I believe I can. I have I have Discord usernames, so I might not get it,
Yeah,
but
because when he was telling us about it, it was still in the baby stages of it, and I was like, I need to now learn how to be a narrator because I want in on this.
so I can share that Tegan Burke, if you know of
Mm-hmm.
her,
Yep.
she's
Yep.
joined it with me. Uh, Ethan Gray is the DM. We have Hell, Zach R. Both absolutely incredible narrators.
Amazing people too, by the way. I know them personally.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I got to meet Hell for the first time at a book signing event, and it's just amazing to actually meet people physically. They become a little bit more real,
Yes.
and Hell is an incredible
She
individual.
is. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
we've got her scheduled, I think, in January, so I'm excited for her episode.
that'll be good.
So how many people are there?
And then, in terms of players, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's 6 players, maybe 7, from time to time, I believe. But we communicate via Discord, and excuse me, sorry, a few of them are using like Discord usernames, so I can't, off the top of my head, remember which narrator they are in particular.
Yeah.
But our first session will be on the 13th of December, so more information about us will come out soon. We're
And you
excited.
guys are going to be doing that live, right?
I
Or is it going to be something you guys just post after?
I'm not sure. Again, I've only just joined the crew. I believe it's something that will be recorded and then posted rather than something that is produced live. But it might be a live thing. I'll be pleasantly surprised if it is.
Either way, I'm there for it. I
That
can't
was
wait.
exciting.
Yeah.
Ethan's such a great guy too, so you're in good hands.
Yeah.
I know there's probably never going to be a perfect storm creation for the Critical Role people again, but if it happens to anyone, I hope it happens to you guys.
I hope so. The thing that so Critical Role is a good example of a good D&D group because they were friends beforehand. Vast majority of people who have tried to copy the Critical Role since then have tried to just group people together and hit that. You don't hit that straight off the mark. You hit that months, years after getting to know and playing with people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The way that some of them bullshit with each other and rag each other, like
Hmm.
you couldn't do that with someone you just met.
Yeah.
And that's half the reason why we love it.
Most of the really successful D&D podcast groups, D&D live plays, are people who were already friends and already did things beforehand. Dimension 20, fantastic group of people who already did a lot of work together with the Game Changer and Dropout TV. Think of many more right now, but I believe Dungeons
Yeah,
and
there's just not a
Daddies.
lot of really good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that level, and that's what me and Kathy have talked about before. Like even podcasts, the banter between the co-host and host, and like the relationship that they have is like that's one of the biggest reasons why I enjoy podcasts and stick around. And just the authenticity of like You're not trying to impress these people. You're just genuinely being yourself. That's kind of hard to do, especially when you're trying to, put this group together and then your goal is to become like Critical Role. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But still, I hope it happens for you guys. So.
Me too. It'll just be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of silly, like characters, which I'm looking forward to because we all get that opportunity to be a new character. Yeah.
The
Can you
accents
tell
and the
us
different
what?
voices. See, that's why this one would be so freaking successful, I think, because you guys are y'all are so skilled at voicing other voices, like it, and it's oh gosh, I want to hear it. I want to listen.
We can't give any information about the characters that are being
Dang it, that
played,
was my next question.
partly because Ethan is planning the first couple sessions where we will be working with him to create the world, and so we don't really have the characters set in stone yet until we know what the state of the world is before we even how would our characters have ended up. But most narrators, I would say, usually have a few go-to voices for different kinds of characters. So if I end up playing like an old wizard like character or a grandfather kind of character, I'll slip into my regular old man wizard voice, very reminiscent of a bit of Gandalf mixed in with some Belgrath the sorcerer. That's the voice that I would go to for that. Or if I was doing a Goliath barbarian or that kind of character, I would probably have my voice resonate a little like this and throw on this character. So we all have those kind of go-to voices that we would very easily slip into. So I'm looking forward to it.
I
Well, that's going to be a change for you going from a DM where you have to do this NPC, this NP, this NPC, and all different voices to now you just get to kind of like settle in one voice.
I get to
You get
play.
to play.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
fun.
Uh, so you mentioned that you did a DM session for your full time. Is that your boss in the game design world?
Yeah. So unfortunately, the development of the game has had to be put on hold due to funding. I also work for him and one of his companies doing IT support for a medical supply company and medical lab testing company. So if a doctor puts in an order for a certain test to be done and it's not producing the results it should, or the machine isn't working and the supply line isn't working, I help to facilitate and do the IT support for that stuff. That's my day job that I do. And then I've got my audiobooks that I do in the evenings when I can. And then I also have I started a leathercraft business recently. So I've got an order. I've got like 9 orders that I need to fill in the next couple of weeks for Magic the Gathering deck boxes made out of leather. So it's just so much work right now. So much work.
So do you have booths at Ren fairs and stuff too?
Since I only just started this past year, I will be planning to do as many Ren fairs next year as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could have like I don't. So we had another narrator on who did CDs, and then the inside was a QR code to go to his audiobooks.
Mm.
You could sell your CDs of your fantasy books there too, because I went to Ren Fair just the other week, and I didn't realize there was authors at these things. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is your market target right here for readers. So I have to get on that now. But you have so many different facets of what you do that you could market out of Ren Fair.
Between my huge set of leather armor, the little bags that look like acorns and straps and all that, I'll also have my fantasy audiobooks. Yeah.
Yes, that would be so awesome. Because then, whenever they put on their armor and all their equipment, they are listening to your audiobooks while they're swinging their swords out in the middle of the forest, pretending to be the character that you're narrating.
It would be very cool to find out that someone does that.
Is there okay, I'm going to ask you a question. So if you had an author, I'm going to ask you for two different genres. So for fantasy, and then also for romance. So if an author came to you and said, I want to write a book for you, for your voice, what would that look like in fantasy and in romance? Because, or you could do romantasy, like combine them, but whatever.
So on the fantasy side, well, since the vast majority of the work that I've done is fantasy, I've done a couple romance. For the fantasy side of things, I would just encourage the author to deduce characters from various regions of the world, so that I get, because I really love putting on those different voices and those different accents, and it would be nice to be able to say, okay, every character that hails from this nation will have this accent, and that's it, and that's good, so that you have a good idea of where the characters are from just simply by listening to their voices, and then maybe go and explore that land so that you get to hear a plethora of versions of that same voice. That would be a lot of fun to do. For the romance side of things, I don't know, really. I would just hope that the main character that I will be portraying doesn't need to be a different accent, that the main character can be just my voice as it is. A lot of romance books require the main character to be American. And I'm not as confident with my American as I am with my English. Makes sense. And so I would love to do more English romance, but with a female narrator who complements my vocal style and I complement hers, because though I have done romance novels just me, it is so much better when I get to work with a female narrator, and they're incredible. I am in awe of every opportunity I get to be able to spend time working with. I worked with Blanca Frappier. I worked with Laura, currently working on with Carmen, who is absolutely incredible. And I'm very excited for the opportunity to lend my voice next to hers. So, yeah.
We just had her on last weekend.
She's amazing, isn't she? She really
Yes.
is. And she's only just started, and it just blows my mind that she is like made for this almost, because I'm just in awe of her capabilities.
Yeah, she is
Yeah.
amazing in her job and in just as a person too. I love her to death.
Yeah. Do you have like a book, or oh my gosh, my brain just completely stopped working. Do you have a fantasy that you enjoy reading, or was one of your favorite fantasies that you read a lot or just kind of connect a lot with?
Uh, yeah, so I've mentioned it a couple times already, and I mention it all the time. My all-time favorite fantasy story that I keep going back to, it's one of those comfort stories that I'll go back and almost reset, is the Belgariad series by David Eddings. It is a fantasy's tale that starts out with this young boy named Garion who is being looked after by on a farm by his aunt, and an old storyteller comes in regularly to tell tales, and then something happened, and suddenly young Garion is being whisked away from the village by his aunt and this old storyteller, and you begin to realize that his aunt is actually his great 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 aunt, who is a sorceress and practically immortal. The old man storyteller, Belgarath the sorcerer, is thousands of years old and is her father. So there's a moment where suddenly the little boy Garion realizes that the man that's been coming to tell stories at his village is actually a grandfather that he never knew he had. And it's just a magical moment where he starts calling him grandpa and old wolf, and it's just a great story. So it's a coming of age child of prophecy tale. So young Garion will eventually grow into be the king of the United Land of Riva, and you see him growing up. You see the band of characters being mixed together as they're being whisked away onto this great adventure. Absolutely fantastic story. I love it, and I keep going back to the audiobook, which was just expertly narrated by Cameron Byerly. That's the book that I keep going back to.
Have you ever thought of writing a book yourself?
Thought about it. I struggle with coming up with the words. I know what I'm good at. What I'm good at is reading someone else's words and telling stories, but coming up with the words is so hard. I love, because of my love of storytelling and RPGs and gameplay, I love choose your own adventure style games or fantasy fight games. Books, sorry. Choose your own adventure books. So I'd love one day to be involved in the creation of a choose your own adventure story. In my career as a video game designer prior to doing this, I had to get my qualification, I had to put in a design for a game that I would like to produce. And so I wrote this rough story about a main character who is being forced upon by many like opposing groups at the start of the story, being attacked by this mysterious individual. Then about halfway through the story, realizing that he's been duped the whole time, and he's given an opportunity to go back in time and stop those people, and then realizing he is the mysterious character that has been throughout his tale that is struggling against. So I wrote this story for a video game so that the idea would be you play through the story once as the first character, and then you have to go back in time and actually beat your previous playthrough, because you got to get through the areas quicker, and you got to fight him a little bit better. And since the game design work has been kind of put on side, I would still love to write that as a story, but I'm terrible at coming up with the words. So it's one of those that until someone pushes or gives me that jolt or assistance, it'll probably sit on the shelf of to be done at some point.
That sounds like so much fun. Oh my gosh, I like that. I love that, and it can spark. I love how stories spark from like just you're doing it for a video game, and now it's like this story that you feel like you need to tell. That's how you become an author. Like that's it. But I'm right there with you. My first book that I wrote, I didn't feel like I could do it without a co-author, and that was what got me started. But then after that, it was like, I'm off. I took my training wheels off, and I was gone.
My wife does a lot of fan fiction writing, and she has plans to write her own stories at some point once she's built that confidence. It was only going to book fairs with me that and actually engaging with other indie authors, did she realize that the hurdle to actually publish isn't as big as it used to be. And so she might be spurred on to actually write her tales, which are incredible. She's told me about them all the time. I love them. I hope to maybe be able to voice them at some point. Yeah.
Well, let her know that we've got a spot for her on the show as soon as she's ready for that.
Awesome. Will do.
So, what do you have that you're working on right now that you would like to tell the audience about?
I have just started and will be wrapping up the first book in what looks like a 10-book series by Jared Woodcocks. It's called Shadowcasters. It's the first book in the Journeys to Torture series. And the first story is what's essentially happening is 3 young heroes are being trained to become shadowcasters, members of the elite form of military in their world. Shadowcasting is those people with the ability to summon weapons and creatures using essentially shadow puppetry. And so the author is doing an absolutely incredible job of just creating this atmosphere where the kids are being trained, and it's got a bit of an anime feel to it. The three happy-go-lucky students are being trained by Master Toshio, and he's guiding them. And it's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed getting into each of those different characters. I keep mentally jumping to characters from Metal Alchemist or Yu-Gi-Oh! And all these different anime cartoons that I've seen as inspiration for these characters. So very excited for that one. And then, if you don't mind me plugging a second, I just
Please
Go
received
for
do.
it.
the third and final installment in the Gregor Yerald story for A.P. Beswick's Levanthria series. So, if you haven't already heard, the Levanthria series of books is dark fantasy retelling of British folklore. So the first book, A Forest of Vanity and Valor, which is my bestseller, the audiobook has sold something like 40,000 copies, 45,000 copies at this point.
Nice.
Very good. The first book is a dark fantasy retelling of Robin Hood. And then the second is Blackbeard and the Pendle Witches, and the third is George and the Dragon, and so on. It just builds up. He also has his Christmas series, which is within the same world. Gregor Yerald is What If Santa, but he's a monster hunter. And it's so much fun.
Oh,
So he weaves into the story the little hints at Santa Claus, but in his version. So Santa leaves little presents at the kids' homes, which are actually tiny little totems that he has imbued in with magic to ward off the evil monsters that were attacking the
When
area.
is
And
this going to
so
be
he
out?
starts. So
I
the first
know.
the first two books are already out. They've been out for a
The
couple of years,
Christmas
so I
one.
would
But
absolutely
I want
the Christmas ones. Yeah, the Christmas ones. I'm about to work on the third and final one, where it is Gregor Yerald as the Santa Claus character, essentially, versus the Krampus character. And that'll be done in time for Christmas. But this is the third book in the
yes.
Christmas
We're
series,
thinking the
so
same.
I would
Oh, so there's
recommend.
already some
We're
out.
thinking
Yeah,
the
the
same.
first two came out the previous couple of years.
Okay, so we might do an audiobook review for you on that one.
Okay. Let me quickly pull up the title of the first book in the Christmas trio that is there.
Yes, let us know.
Let me.
That would be perfect for December.
Well, the first book is A Frost of Fear and Fortitude by A.P. Beswick. Entirely possible. I think the author has also put these up on YouTube, but if you get them direct from him, that's the best way for it. The second one,
Yeah.
A Frost of Death and Deceit, you get to really experience and dig deep into who this monster hunter Santa Claus is, and he encounters his first elf that helps him with his craft, and now the third one is him versus the Krampus character.
Okay, I'm invested. That sounds amazing.
It is.
And I don't even read
So
fantasy.
good.
Like we just did a fantasy, and I was like,
Oh, I should ask, have you ever read A Shadow of the Gods?
I haven't, no.
Okay, well, if you like it, don't listen to our review that we're going to be doing here in a little bit.
Okay. You tear it apart?
It's not that. It's just I can't get too into it, but it's just think of Tolkien but less storyline. All the detail
and more.
and all the detail and then add some more.
Okay. Well,
I had such high hopes for it.
if you listen to the audiobook of A Frost of Fear and Fortitude, you'll get to hear my Gregor voice, which is a bit more of the gravel.
If I close my eyes, you sound like Geralt of Rivia in my mind. Like
And that's kind of why his voice, his character, his name, there's little hints there to Geralt of Rivia.
Hey, I have a question real
that
quick.
was
I know we're
pretty
kind of
dang
wrapping up, but can you do like or do you in some of these the Japanese like accent to dialect, like like saying the Japanese type words with all these?
So, yes. So I have done early on in my audiobook career an audiobook that was Japanese ghost stories. And that was really difficult to get all the different monster names and the ghost names for all the different kinds of things pronounced correctly. Now, at this point, there's a lot of great resources to help you get the right pronunciation of words. But I find for accents like Japanese, that if I tried to do a Japanese accent, I would just butcher it,
Right.
and it would not be good. It would not be representative, and I would feel like I'm insulting them. So I do little hints towards it, a bit of the cadence that you often hear with the voices, less of the trying to imitate, but just trying to portray how a character would feel and emote rather than the sound of that particular accent. So, yes, with a character like Master Toshio in this book, I give him a little bit of the vocal style that would be familiar with works, but I don't try to do a Japanese accent. Yeah.
That's
That's cool.
cool. That is very, I love how personal that is. That feels like you
Yeah.
still, right? Like, I think that there's an art to using your voice and telling the stories, but also still being you.
In mind that they're going to do.
She's wanting to hire you.
They have like some Japanese references, and
Mm-hmm.
but I love that, and so I've been kind of on the lookout for him for. I found it.
Yeah.
Yay.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What really helps any narrator, so if you're thinking of getting a narrator for any of your books, the more reference material you can provide to help them get the voices right up front, the better. And so with these more challenging voices, like the Japanese and African voices and the like, it really helps me to get like a character that you would like it to sound like. So this one in particular, Master Toshio, for the story that I'm doing, the author said he wants him to be very much like Uncle Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I will gladly sacrifice my time to research the Avatar TV show to practice that
You love
voice.
it.
Yeah, of course I do. So if you had a particular TV or movie character that you are imagining for that, then I would enjoy the opportunity, and I'm sure many others, to research that character and just delve into those examples of that voice.
That's so cool. So, are you good at impressionating then? Is that something that you have always been good at, or?
I think I'm okay. Like most impressionists are better at some impressions than others. The first impression I ever did, and I remember doing this as a kid, was a Sean Connery accent. I would slip into being Sean Connery all the time when I was a child,
Classic.
which was odd. Yeah. And that was, and the way that came out was, I watched the movie of him with Catherine Zeta-Jones called Entrapment, which is a fun little heist, slight romance story there, but with an age gap that doesn't make sense. But there's one particular line of him that I just kept repeating all the time, which was, "What can you do with $7 billion that you can't do with four?" I would do that over and over again as a kid, and so yeah, there are some accents some impressions that I can do, and do them better if I'm actually just quoting a movie. Yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, you had 007
That's fair.
too. That James Bond
Mm-hmm.
with Mr. Sean for a long time.
Okay, I have one more question and then we'll kind of wrap everything up just because I can't believe I haven't asked it yet and it just reminded me. You've done a lot of biographies on serial killers. How was it first off, just telling their life story and knowing like what they did, and did it affect you any certain way, or was it fascinating to you?
It was very fascinating, but partly because I had never really been exposed to these characters very much. Like, I'd heard the name Ted Bundy mentioned, but whereas Ted Bundy and his story is well known here, especially in Utah, story is barely mentioned at all in the UK. We've got thousands of years of history that we're learning about, that the events of a few individuals over the past century is not new, not that big over there. So I didn't know these characters' stories before I read their biographies. So as I'm reading them, I'm discovering what kind of characters they are, and I love playing a villain whenever I'm narrating a book. So I do enjoy being able to put in that little extra oomph of whenever there's a moment that this describing how the serial killer would chase down his prey. He would focus on that one individual that he wanted, and they were everything for them in that second. And
Holy
I just
shit.
loved doing that.
I know.
I'm like, off. I can't listen to this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have nightmares. Pause.
So it was, I think I auditioned for one a while back, and I think it was the Ted Bundy one. No, it was Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was the one that I auditioned for. And after I did that one, a couple weeks later, the author didn't even ask me, didn't even mention anything, just sent me an offer for the next one, which was Ted Bundy. And then when I had done that, a couple weeks later, he sent me one for John Wayne Gacy. So I'm like, okay, this publishing company is liking my serial killer biographies. Then when I send that third one off, so I've done 3 serial killers, I don't hear back from them for a little while, but then suddenly I just get sent the offer on ACX. I don't actually audition for this. I get sent the offer to produce the biography of Michelle Obama. And I'm like, well, this is very different from what I've been doing for you
Yeah, no kidding.
recently. I can't sound sinister when I'm telling a political biography. And then when that one's done, a couple months later, I get a fourth serial killer. And now I've just done another 2. So H. Holmes, who was really interesting to learn about. And I've lost the name on the top of my head. But yeah, so I've only just released another 2 serial killer biographies. Yeah.
That is, when I saw that, I was like, that is freaking cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but also, I couldn't do it. Just you doing that little bit right there, I'm like, I'm gonna start painting everyone in my life a serial killer. Like, because I mean, that's how it works. Like, they're just normal people, and then they're not,
Yep.
or they're not, and they hide it very
Yeah.
well. Yeah, nope, I couldn't do it. Me and Kathy, we always talk about having someone else in our discussions with us who is very into the thriller and the horror side, because we read a little romance that barely got into scary stuff, and we were like, okay, I don't know if we can do this, and it wasn't that bad.
No. But I've been
Yeah,
trying to get her to listen to Butcher and Blackbird, though, and that is serial killer. Have you listened to it?
I haven't, but I can guess by the Butcher and the Blackbird. That's a good title for a thriller.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Joe Arden and Lucy Rivers
Nope, no
narrating.
thanks.
But yeah, I couldn't. But I'm surprised I was able to listen to it, but I couldn't because I live by myself. I couldn't listen to it at night. I like put on a rom com at night.
Well, I personally love the horror genre of everything. So I do love reading a good horror story. I love ghost stories around a campfire with friends, and watching a good horror movie because. And the thing that I love about it is how immersive horror stories get. When you leave the cinema, you've just watched the Avengers movie. You leave the cinema thinking, "Oh, that was a fun movie." You don't leave the cinema feeling like you are one of the Avengers. But when you leave the cinema after watching a horror movie, you're keeping an eye on that shadow in the corner of the room.
You can't use that voice while you say this stuff.
You make sure that that light stays on just that second longer.
Holy fucking
You
shit, Aaron.
because it pulls you in. Like, you feel the goosebumps on the back of your
my
neck
lights
as you
on.
realize that.
Kathy's
Yeah.
got to go check all her closets in her house now.
And that's why I love the horror genre, because it pulls you in so much more than any other genre does.
Oh my god, no wonder you don't need offers on those freaking books.
I know,
You're just hired.
right? Holy crap.
Oh,
If any
oh my gosh.
author, any horror authors are listening, I haven't done as many horror audiobooks as I would like, so I would
Totally,
like
if
to
I can
do
hire him,
more
like,
horror. Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Yeah. If you want a reaction of what your listeners will get, you just got a preview of it right there, and we're wieners.
Totally. We're such lightweights when it comes to that.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Okay, so if anyone does want to hire you, because this is a great freaking clip for advertising on your voice
nice.
and how good you do, where can they go and how can they find you?
So the best place to engage with me and my content has to be on TikTok, really. That's where I do the vast majority of my work. I am regularly narrating live for people. That's probably the easiest way. My TikTok is at aaronsmith.narrator, but I do have a website that is aaronswordsmithy.com, ARONSWORD Smithy, SMITHY.com. That is my website where you'll see a short catalogue of some of the books I've done, a button that will take you to Audible filtered by my name so you can see more of the books that I've done, and you can email me from there. But those are the two ways. My DMs are always open on TikTok, so by all means, feel free to contact me on that.
Okay, now I need to go listen to a rom-com or something because ending this on a scary note with your voice is not fun.
Well, might I recommend for you then to calm a romantic story that I did do, that's one of my favorites, is Colonel Brandon in his own words. So it is a fan fiction retelling of Sense and Sensibility from the perspective of Colonel Brandon. And because the author loved the movie, I got to do the whole story as Snape, as an Alan Rickman impression for the whole romantic story. And it's good. I would highly recommend it. So to help you calm down from the horror, go and listen to Colonel Brandon in his own words.
Yep, it's written down. That's awesome. Okay, well, we've got our book reviews for all of next year. We already know everything we're going to do. We just need to go through your list of books and we're good. Oh, that's awesome. Aaron, you're fantastic. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to jump on with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. And definitely let me know when you guys do your D&D session and it drops live because I'm going to be big old fan number one right here.
Wonderful.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of L3. We'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. Remember, every story has a journey, and every journey deserves to be heard. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep listening.